Hey guys, welcome back to Maelstrom Gaming Studios. I'm Craig, and I am going to talk about my 5-0 undefeated Tyranid list, Assimilation Swarm, that I played this past weekend at Renegade Open. I had a blast using this list. If you are a regular on the channel here, you know you've seen this list. I also took it to North Star Open and went 5-1. So still a list that I like. There's one minor tweak that I had to change to it going from then to now with the point changes, but I want to talk about the list, talk about my very first undefeated at a 5-round or greater tournament. Before I dive in, I just want to thank everybody for liking, subscribing, supporting the channel. It really means a lot. Members specifically, you guys really just help us keep going, and you have encouraged me. You know, I started a while back with this channel. Tyranids were my favorite army. They still are my favorite army, but thanks to you guys and the support, it has allowed me to just further push my Tyranid play that much more, and to the point where I can do pretty well at some events with some wonky lists that most people don't expect to be bringing. So thank you guys again, and now let's dive into today's video. So this was a 85 player GT when it started in the first round. 5 rounds only over 2 days. I also participated in a 3-round doubles event the day before. Connor and I played a Tyranid and Custodes matchup against, various opponents. Calvin and Matt played Death Guard and World Eaters, which was just points away from getting first place. So congrats to them on a 3-0, but didn't quite sneak out the top spot, but still fantastic event for them. So I was pretty tired coming through all this, which is why I am waiting until now to get the video out. I needed a few days to just rest. My brain was just melted after playing this. So yeah, 85 player GT, lots of fun. It's our biggest one of, there's North Star Open, which is also a big event, but in the main cities of Minnesota, this is the biggest event of the year. A lot of events going on, not just the GT for 40K, but there's AOS and Kings of War and Bolt Action, all sorts of stuff going on. So it's a great event, a lot of people there, and I just want to say before we dive into any matchups or anything, I love the community here that we have in Minnesota and people who travel from outside. It's just a great community. I've played in, I don't know, at least a dozen GTs now, and countless amounts of smaller RTTs, and I can count on one hand the amount of bad opponents, even then I wouldn't even say that they're bad opponents, but it's just everyone here is a fantastic opponent, great community, and I'm really fortunate to have to be playing in such a great area. So yes, thank you everyone. I'll say that right now. All of my opponents I played this weekend, fantastic people, really great games, would happily play them again. But now let's dive into my list a little bit, which is probably why a lot of you are here to talk about my wonky Assimilation Swarm list. So I'll put the list in the description below. If it fits, it should fit. If not, I'll put a link so you can find it. I love this list. A dream list I wanted to run for a while in 10th edition, and it just wasn't viable until they made the stratagem change. So that is the list. It is 2 Hive Tyrants and a Neurotyrant, and they are being accompanied by 12 Tyrant Guard in Assimilation Swarm with a lot of healing. The Hive Tyrant has Instinctive Defense, which is a fantastic enhancement. In my opinion, it is a little situational, but when played properly, it is probably one of the best enhancements in the game, giving a Hive Tyrant and 6 Tyrant Guard free heroic intervention, even if you've already heroiced, because of the way the wording works, and fight first if they're within range of a harvester unit, specifically the Tyrant. Then it's such a powerful melee threat that it really screws up melee armies specifically. And on top of that, the Neurotyrant is just a fantastic monster with Biophagic flow. It's just, yeah, great include there. The rest of the list, we have 10 Hormagaunts for BATTLELINE. These guys really were just there for taking an objective, maybe mid to late game, doing some early actions if I need it, screening out my backline, whatever the case is. It's nice to have them in there. Also, an advance and charge threat for some chaff if opponents are really scared of them, which they don't need to be. The rest of the list has got a Biovore. We have 1 unit of 3 Pyrovores. Those are very crucial in the list. 2 individual pyrovores. These ones I typically put in strategic reserve. Actually, I think every single game I put them in strategic reserve, and their job is to walk on and do actions, maybe get to one of the flank objectives, do some Assimilation Swarm stuff, or just be bait for my opponent to trigger strats, because we have that one if you kill Harvester unit, +1 to wound, and sometimes those are easy bait if you really want it. But yeah, perfect there. 3 Psychophages in the list. These guys are even more crucial than the Pyrovores. Your army lives and dies off of the fate of these Psychophages. I like to keep one on my home objective. One of them just follows the Hive Tyrant around, and typically Swarmlord too. And then the other one goes to whatever your closest no man's land objective is to start getting heals off via that objective. And really, those things matter the most. I think in my very first game, I lost a Psychophage on turn 1. The deployment was layout number 3, which is a really tough one for Assimilation Swarm, which is I had to do for the full first day, because you can draw easy line of sight from deployment zone to deployment zone onto the home objective. So it's very tough to just camp a Psychophage there when all the biggest guns can just see it right away from turn 1. So it was a tricky one, but Psychophages are important. 2 Exocrines for some serious firepower that can threaten, really good at threatening ranged and melee threats of all sorts and kinds. We have Tyrannofex. Didn't honestly do too much in the tournament, except be that threat that people have to watch out for, that, hey, I could do 24 damage to you. I could delete that knight. I could delete that truck. I could delete that vehicle, whatever the case is. But that threat is enough to stoke fear into your opponent's eyes, most opponents. And then, of course, the 2x6 Tyrant Guard with Scything Talons. Again, 6 of them went with the Swarmlord. 6 went with the Hive Tyrant. Is important to note, I did give them all Scything Talons. If you see any of my videos or whatever, you'll know some of them are modeled with Crushing Claws. That is purely to keep the 2 units separated, because a lot of the times, especially against melee armies, these 2 blocks are sitting right next to each other, and they're just 12 Tyrant Guard and 2 Tyrants just mashed in the middle of the board, and you don't know which one's going which way if they were all equipped with the same weapon. So I have 6 Crushing Claws, 6 Scything Talon, and that really helps me distinguish which squad is which. Also to note, my Hive Tyrant does have a full melee build. You'll see in the actual list. I think being a fight first beast, the gun is really insignificant when it comes to it. So having the extra Scything Talon attacks just helps you chew through extra models, which is important. So I'll talk about the matchups a little bit more, and then I'll kind of get into maybe some play style of the list while I talk about those matchups. But we'll start with the first game. So game 1 against Eldar was an interesting game. I expected it to go better than it did. It was a very, very close game, as you can see, 75-71. It was a mission K, Scorched Earth, Search and Destroy, and I forget what the primary rule was, but that's okay. Layout 3, like I said, a very tough one. He had a pretty balanced MSU style list, so he had some War Walkers. He had the Avatar, which is a nasty thing for Tyranids to deal with. He had Warp Spiders. He had a unit of Wraith Blades, which I love to see. Fire Dragons, a Falcon, Harlequins. It was all sorts of stuff there. It was a nail biter up throughout most of the game. He rolled some of the most fantastic dice rolls I've ever seen, or series of dice rolls I have seen in a long time. Like, I mean, you guys know on the channel we joke about Connor making insane amount of just like high quality 4-up dice rolls. No, this some of the stuff was insane. And I'm not saying it to like pass off any skill or anything. It was just like the Avatar, I counted, because after the first 4 or 5, it was getting like annoying, that he made 12 out of 13 4-up invuln saves that he had to take. It was just, I mean, the amount of firepower I put into him between the first 2 turns, or turn 2 and 3, should have killed him a couple times. But no, he was only down like 5 or 6 wounds at that point. So it was rough. He had a unit of bikes, the scatter laser bikes, the scout bikes, who have, I believe it's what, 18 shots with their scatter lasers and did 15 wounds to Tyrant Guard. That's hitting on 3s, wounding on 5s. He did 15 wounds, which, you know, Tyrant Guard are great and all, but they will melt that many saves, and a lot of them did. The 3 sniper rifles on the back of those bikes did 6 damage to my Tyrannofex, which was just unheard of. I mean, they're strength 4 guns or whatever. Damage 2, and yes, they're AP 1. I failed my saves, of course, I do. I fail all my 2-up saves, the 3-up saves, but still, they just pumped out insane amount of damage. I was really worried. A big thing, though, that kept the game in my favor was that primary in this mission, Scorched Earth, it can be pretty easy to keep it at an even balance. I was doing better on secondaries, where he was deleting units pretty well. I was over there scoring secondaries as best as possible, and that kept me in the lead. But what won me the game? So I got between various shootings and explosions and whatever, we got the Avatar down to 3 wounds. 3 wounds, and he was burning an objective. He had top of the game, so I went second. Avatar was burning an objective. I had 2 spore mines within charge range of him. And so I did that to end the game. I still had another charge I could have done, but the spore mines charged in there. One of them did 1 wound. One of them did 3 wounds, finishing off the Avatar, denying his burn, and then making that so I won 75-71. There were a few other things I could have done to end the game to maybe still pull out a win or at least a tie, but doing that just made it so it was a clear-cut win. No matter what, I won that one. So absolute nail biter. It really did sort of come down to the last die roll. So I mean, GG to my opponent. It was a hard fought game, and I squeaked one out there when the dice were at all odds against me. They weren't even against me. That's the thing. The dice were not against me. I was rolling fine. He was rolling fine. He just had a few instances where it's just like, oh, what am I going to do against that? But it was a fun game. Game 2 was against Imperial Guard. And Imperial Guard is a matchup that this list can struggle with. The mission helped, I think, a little bit in my favor. Actually, I'm positive. It was the Ritual, so mission and the Ritual, Swift Action, and Crucible of Battle. Again, layout 3, which is really not good for this matchup. I really had a huge chunk of my deployment zone and just could not put anything in. Otherwise, there were 4 Leman Russes that could just shoot and tear it up on the top of the turn. So tough. My opponent did win Best Painted, so we had a pretty beautiful matchup, if I do say so myself, as you had Best Overall and Best Painted going off against each other. He had many tanks. Like I said, 4 Leman Russes, a Rogel Dorn, a Chimera, a Hellhound, Scout Sentinels, Scions, and Aquilons, or Aquilons, however you want to say them. Lots and lots of dudes. It was an insane amount of firepower. I tried to keep the game fairly cagey. Being the Ritual, you can kind of play that a little bit of a more cagey game. But with Guard, if you let them kind of start spiraling out of control with those objectives, it can run away from you. And as Assimilation Swarm, we love this one because we can pop up the objectives exactly where we need them to have a Hive Tyrant, a Pyrovore squad, or a Psychophage sit comfortably on the objective and give out all of its Feel No Pain and heals and whatnot to the units surrounding it. So I had some really nice shenanigans where you have some Pyrovore sitting behind the wall, and then they're able to revive and chain themselves to get onto an objective. I had some primary flips via that direction. Shadow in the Warp was amazing in this game, turning off the orders and stratagems from most of his big tanks and denying a couple primary, 5 primary in the game. That really was the big thing because it allowed his shooting to be less effective, keep my Swarmlord unit alive a little bit longer, able to kind of slash up some tanks and things like that. But this was a really cagey game. I didn't kill a whole lot. I think I killed 20 guardsmen, a Chimera, a Hellhound, a Scout Sentinel, 2 Scout Sentinels, 2 units of Aquilons twice, because they revive for 2 CP, and some Scions and a Lehman Russ, if I didn't say that already. That was it. I did not kill a ton, and most of my army was kind of obliterated. It was a weird game. Big thing for me is I did have bottom of turn, so I was able to see exactly what needed to be done and position myself properly. So I was able to spawn another objective, get that primary, and get the final kills I needed. It came down to he had 10 Aquilons on my home objective, I believe it was, and I had the secondary, was it Storm Hostile or Overwhelming Force, kill an enemy unit that was on an objective. So it came down to my Neurotyrant and a Psychophage. Can they kill the 10 Aquilons? And the Neurotyrant killed the last one in melee, if I'm not mistaken, and that won me the game. Well, that, and there was something else, but there's another unit, but to get enough points. But yes, so that helped win me the game there. Fantastic game to him. It really was a nail biter of a game. Again, I just came from one nail biter, and then I played this one, which really came down to like the last die roll again. So tough games, but good results there for the Assimilation Swarm. And then we're going to go into game 3. And game 3 is against Eldar again. Now this game, you can see it was a 5-point win. So another nail biter. I again did go second, which is great. Going second 3 times out of 3 games was the best I've ever done when it comes to that luck chance. So I'll take that. But this was the weirdest game. The weirdest game I've ever played at 40k. The mission was M, so that's Purge the Foe, Rapid Escalation, and Crucible Battle. Again on layout 3, which was annoying. He had both of the avatars, so the Avatar of Cain and the Incarn. He had 3 Fire Prisms, 2 units of Swooping Hawks, 2 units of Scorpions, 2 units of Spiders, a Autarch Wayleaper, and a Farseer to give that -1 to wound buff to one of the avatars throughout the game. It was just so weird because of the way the firing lines were. His tanks could do so much damage to whatever poked out that I did not feel comfortable poking anything out because they would be obliterated by fire prisms. But at the same time, my Rupture Cannon and my Exocrines are perfect at killing these things. So he would always, and they have the linked fire, so he could always just poke one forward, shoot something, and then pay the 2 CP, fire and fade away, and then I could never see it. So I think game 1, or turn 1, 2, and turn 3, we only traded like 1 unit to 1 unit at a time. It was, otherwise we just kind of camped in our deployment zones waiting for something to happen. My poor fight first Hive Tyrant did nothing of significance in game 1 except get murdered by the Avatar. It did nothing of significance really in game 2. It really sat around my home objective because of all the deep striking things popping around. And in this game, it didn't do anything either, except in turn 5, it made like a 5-inch charge and just obliterated the Farseer, who had to be in the center of the center of the board to get area denial, because that was the secondary he had. And I, at the end, had no prisoners, so I had to go kill that thing and get on that objective for a lot of primary and secondary points. But it was at the end of the game. Also, the big thing, I don't know if he got impatient or based on the cards he drew, he knew he had to take action. So he sent a unit of 2 Warp Spiders, because that was all that was left from fighting, out into my home field lines with their flicker fire or flicker jump. I overwatched them knowing that the Incarn was going to pop up in my face, but at the same time, I really needed that kill, and I needed to kind of spark off this game because I had bottom of turn, so I wanted to set it off. I debated back and forth whether I should let it happen, but I did. Overwatched it, Incarn in my face, and she proceeded to just slice and dice Swarmy's unit to pieces. Swarmy did do everything he could, brought the Incarn down to 2 wounds or whatever it was. I don't know, 2, 3 wounds, along with the Tyrant Guard, and eventually fell, but then I was able to clean her up at the bottom of the turn. Barely, but I did, and that was it. That was the game. It was just, like I said, it was just such a weird game. I think turns 1, 2, and 3 took like an hour, maybe. We were just like, okay, I'm gonna move here, I'm gonna shoot this unit, and I hope I kill them. And then he's gonna move here and shoot this unit, and then he kills it, and then pop away. And we were just trading minimal points because no one wanted to face the wrath of each other's firepower, which was significant. I'm not really giving one an MVP much. One of the Psychophages scored 9 points for me of secondaries. He got me a containment. He got me a sabotage. He got me a recover assets, and didn't do anything else the entire game but just sit in the corner and try and farm those secondary points. It was just a weird game. Like I said here, I lost 2 Psychophages, 4 Pyrovores, and Swarmlord squad. That's it. And for him, he lost a Fire Prism, the Scorpions, the Spiders, and the Incarn. The regular Avatar on foot did nothing all game. It just kind of sat there and waited for something to happen. It never did. Kind of like my Foot Tyrant. So, weird game, really weird game, really good opponent, but that was that one. So after that was day 1. My poor Foot Tyrant with the fight first was really sad because he has not got to use his fight first at all to do anything fancy like he's designed to do. And then game 4 came, and there was a high probability I was playing orcs because there were 2 orc players around me in the ranking. So I thought, great, let's play some orcs. That I can do. And sure enough, we did. And I believe this was runner up to best painted. So yet again, we had another beautiful matchup here. This was mission H, which is supply drop, one of my least favorite missions. Hammer and Anvil, and Smoke and Mirrors, which I don't think any of us bothered with or did anything with anyway. Layout 1, which is a much better one for Assimilation Swarm to work around. He was playing a Warhorde, which was with 30 Beast Boys. Each had a Beast Boss and each in a kill rig. He had Gazgul with a few Mega Knobs, Flashgits in a truck, Gretchen, and Storm Boys. And then some regular boys and stuff too. But that was the list. It was really looking hairy for me. I mean, the log turn, just how fast they were at the end of their turn, even with my whole Spore Mines trying to screen out as best as possible. He was in my backline really early on, and I was worried, but it didn't. Him being over there, it, killed an Exocrine. The Exocrine did his job before he died, but still, it was kind of weird. I totally spaced that Gazgul was flat 4 damage in melee. I thought he was 3. And he walked up and charged Swarmy Squad or Heroic Intervention. I don't remember how it happened. I think he charged Swarmy Squad because Heroic intervened because I was not able to Heroic intervene with my Hive Tyrant because he's too far away. And he picked up 6 Tyrant Guard just like that. I was not at all anticipating that. I did not roll well on my Feel No Pains. I didn't roll any of them actually at all. That's why he picked up all 6 of them from the Feel No Pain from the Psychophage. And Swarmy did his job, or tried to do his job, in dealing with Gazgul. He got him down to essentially, I think it was 2 wounds. I mean, he did get him down to 2 wounds after everything. But the important stuff was that Gazgul and Swarmy duked it out for a little bit, and I forced my opponent with the +1 CP cost to spend like 4 or 5 CP, or 6 CP essentially, in one turn, because he had his all stocked up and he discarded a bunch, and he had to do a whole bunch of CP spending, and he thought it was worth it to spend them all, and it really didn't end up mattering, the fact that he spent it. The outcome didn't happen, like the fight on death and what is it, lethal or something. I don't know the orc stratagems, but he explained to me and spent all of his CP, and that draining the orcs CP that early and that significantly really helped. Yes, Swarmlord did die, but while he was dying, we had the Foot Tyrant and his 6 Tyrant Guard who were going to town. They were slicing up boys left and right. He knew about the fight first stuff. I warned him. I warned him again as soon as he charged. I'm like, you know what's going to happen? He said, yes. So he did. And yeah, the fight first Hive Tyrant and his 6 Tyrant Guard picked up a regular squad of boys, 2 squads of Beast Nega boys with their bosses, and a kill rig throughout the course of that game. I had a little bit of help with the kill rig. It wasn't soloed by the Hive Tyrant, but I had some help. And I had a ton of CP because just the way the game went, and I was able to, you know, popping lethals on it, getting all those lethal hits through. I did get lucky. The Tyranno effects didn't do much yet in this tournament. He popped the Falcon in the first game, and he severely crippled the Leman Russ in the second game, but that was it. And in this game, he did a fat 11 damage to a kill rig, so that was fantastic. And then he did, I don't know, 7 more to another one, and it was just a melee mess in the middle. And the orc list is the kind of list mine preys on when it comes to the matchmaking, because melee armies do not want to charge 6 Tyrant Guard and a Hive Tyrant that have fight first, because they can wipe the floor with pretty much most melee threats, especially if they're at full strength. He did make one crucial mistake. It was a crucial mistake. It was a risked calculation in his play. So we made 2 charges. It was Gazgul and then a Beast Nega boy group. And Gazgul had 2 wounds left. And he was going after my Psychophage that was sitting on the center objective. And the Psychophage only had 7 wounds. Gazgul, in all matters of expected, should obliterate the Psychophage. But the other unit, the Beast Nega boys, I believe they were up against... Were they also up against a Psychophage? Or Psychophage and Hormagaunts, I think is what it was. And he wanted to make sure they swung, because I could have clapped back there more effectively, he thought in his mind. That was the mistake, because he butchered the Hormagaunts, and I didn't really care. It didn't matter too much my game plan. But I had the CP to interrupt with the Psychophage, and I was able to get that Dev Wound damage 2 through, finish off Gazgul, which gave me the center objective, which gave me big primary, because the center objective was the one that was going to be worth 8 points next turn. And then in the final round, it was the one that was going to be worth 15 points. So that Gazgul dying there to the interrupt really spiraled his primary score out of control. Also, the Neurotyrant's Shadow, specifically that -1, caused him to fail almost every battle shock when I did Shadow in the Warp, and specifically that caused me to flip the key primaries. Like I said, the one that got me the 8 primary and the one that got me the 15 primary. I went first in this game, so I needed to use it a little bit differently than in other instances, but allowing me to get 8 and 15 primary kind of just took me up to the lead in that regard. Secondary scoring, my early game turn 1, 2 secondary scoring was pretty solid, and then in games turns 3, 4, 5, they were pretty balanced between us. So the early game secondary and late game primary stood out and gave me the win in this one. Still a great game. Beautiful orc army. I wish I had pictures I would show you, but I totally forgot to take them. I was just so focused on playing this game. And yeah, GG's to my opponent, but that was this one. And then we get to game 5, which was against Dark Angels, Stormlance Dark Angels, which is the one that gives them all advance and charge. And then they have strats for like assaults, for like eradicators and intercessors and things like that. On paper, this list was something I again matched up pretty well, because they want to run and hit me in melee. And I have the fight first Hive Tyrant who says, come at me, even though you are -1 damage, a foot tyrant with all of its twin linked, and you can give it lethal. Its squad can still pick up 2 to 3 Deathwing Knights a turn. Now, I will say, so it's mission A, take and hold, the most basic one, raise banners and tipping points. Layout 1, the most basic mission we have. I will say this, oh, his list. Let me talk to his list first. So, the Lion, 15 Deathwing Knights, 6 Inner Circle Companions with Azrael, 6 Eradicators with a Gravis Captain, 2 units of Infiltrators, and a unit of regular Intercessors. Yeah. It was a scary list. I'm really scared of the Eradicators because they just delete Exocrines left and right, and they do pretty good job at deleting the Tyrant Guard blocks. Now, for my opponent, I said to my first opponent, I've never seen, first opponent had fantastic rolling. This guy, I've never seen such horrible rolling in my entire life. His dice were just downright disgusting. They were horrible. They were horrible. I really felt bad after turn 2. So, and I'm like, yes, this is great. But then after that, I was just like, oh man, this is bad. Where do I start with the bad rolling to say? So I went first on this one. So he had bomb a turn, so I had to be a little aggressive with my fight first Hive Tyrant because I wanted to get him up at me so I could start dealing with the Lion, who also has fight first. So I wanted to bait the charge on him to me first. I had an Exocrine who could just ever so slightly move up and draw a bead across the table to see his Inner Circle Companions. He could see one of them. And I rolled pretty well. You know, average. I got 4 wounds through, which, you know, great. They have 4 up and I kill 1 or 2. That's fantastic. Turn 1, I can chip off 2 of those Inner Circle Companions. That's a lot less annoyance that I have to deal with later because they are a really good unit. My opponent came and rolled his info saves and failed them all. 4 Inner Circle Companions done just off the bat. He tried a reroll, and he also failed that as well. So, before the game really even kicked off, he was down 4 Inner Circle Companions. And that is just the tip of the iceberg with his bad rolling. He then moved up his units as expected, and did exactly what we anticipated. His Eradicators moved up, used the advance strat so they could shoot after advancing, stayed just outside my Spore Mine bubble, and got beads onto my Exocrine. He did like 3 wounds. Yes, the Exocrine had 6 up feeling the pain, but I only made, 1 or 2 of them. He just whiffed all of his dice rolls. And yes, they get full reels to hit, wound, and damage, and he just whiffed them. Then, we'll skip a little bit, but then his 5 Deathwing Knights also charged said Exocrine. Only did 7 wounds. I only made 1 feel no pain, so it's not like I made crazy saves or anything. He just whiffed miserably. Not only that, but he again played it perfectly, moved up the Lion in just a way where he could charge my Spore Mine, and then when it blew up, consolidated into my Swarmlord unit and then swing against that. Now the Lion, keep in mind, has damage 4 swings, so he could theoretically pick up a whole Tyrant Guard squad. I had Psychophage nearby, so I had the 6 up feeling the pain. But he came in there and he swung okay. He did not enough wounds to pick up the whole squad, but then I will say this was some luck on my part. My 6 up feeling pains popped off a little bit, so I kept rolling 1/6 out of 4 over and over. One time I had a Tyrant Guard on 1 wound. I wish we had this on recording because no one would believe me. I had a Tyrant Guard on 1 wound. I said, I'll throw these dice to see if you make it. And I rolled 4 6s. So that 1 Tyrant Guard absorbed 2 swings from the Lion, then died, and then killed another one. But the Lion only killed, I think it was 3, maybe 4 Tyrant Guard, where he should have easily just picked up all of them and maybe even wounded Swarmy. But then, in the clapback, the Hive Tyrant and the Swarmlord, or the Hive Tyrant, the Tyrant Guard and the Swarmlord picked up the Lion. He failed 4 invuln saves, 3 invuln saves. Let's see. The Spore Mine dropped him down a wound. The Tyrant Guard dropped him down 2 wounds, so he only had 6 left. He failed 3 invuln saves from the Swarmlord, rerolled 1, still failed it. The line was dead. And then I used, some CP and healed another Tyrant Guard back. So then I was back up to 3 Tyrant Guard, I think it was at that time. Meanwhile, so that was all basically turn 1. Yeah, that was all more or less turn 1, part of turn 2. And he failed to kill an Exocrine. That was a super easy target. He failed to wipe out the Tyrant Guard from the Swarmlord. He lost the Lion, and he lost most of his Inner Circle companions. So you can kind of see where the game just started spiraling from there when you fail that kind of stuff. Because that Exocrine who lived on 3 wounds, who absolutely had no business being alive, then, standing still, shot back at the Eradicators who shot at him, and proceeded to pick up 4 of them. Which was, again, disgusting. But it is what happened. And then the Tyrannofex, he shot down and popped the other 2 or something like that. It was just not a great game for my opponent. And it's, again, I don't want to say he played it poorly or anything. He just had horrible dice. The day before, or 2 days before, when we did the doubles event, I won some Inquisitor dice or whatever. They have the Inquisition logo on them. And I gave them to him after this because I said, I feel horrible that how bad your dice rolls were. So I gave them to him. And yeah, I don't need them. I have plenty of dice here. We don't use those colored ones on the channel anyway. So I gave them to him because I felt that horrible. Like I'm not joking. These dice were abysmal. And his games, he walked his way through to get where he was in the game. So he's got a good list and he's a good player, but his dice just said no. At the end of the game, I had only lost 1 Exocrine, 1 Psychophage, and 6 Tyrant Guard. That was it. And I tabled him by the bottom of turn 4. So MVP, Swarmlord, causing all those strats to be annoying and dealing with the Lion. Also, the fight first Hive Tyrant and his buddies chewing through almost 10 Deathwing Knights. I think technically it was a bit less. I think it was like 7 because I dealt with some others than shooting and stuff like that. But still, it was a blowout, and it was nothing to do with my opponent's tactics, strategy, or list. It was purely dice. Had the dice been a little bit more in favor, would have been a nail biter of a game for sure. But they weren't, and that's the way it went. So those are the games. I had a blast at the event. It was kind of weird having this game be such a blowout because my other games were such absolute nail biters that I was stressed, man. They were such stressful games that any one die roll could have determined or could have changed the fate of those first 4 games dramatically. And then the 5th game was just a cruising. I've got my list here, as you guys can see. So I finished 3rd and got best overall. It's my little trophy here. It's the only time I'm showing it off on the channel. Otherwise, it'll go on my shelf where I can watch it, look at it, because this was my goal. I wanted a best overall since starting GT 4 years ago, maybe even 5 years ago, 4.5 years ago. This was my goal, was to get a best overall at this event or any big GT. And I did it. So yes, my bugs on their display board. Maybe I'll put some pictures or something if you want to see it popping up through here. But I love this list. Couple things about it I will say right now. First off, I still think Assimilation Swarm is a horrible detachment, generally speaking. Maybe that's a bit mean. I think the rules are tough. There are not enough units to really play with it. I didn't even use the hardest effects in this list or Ripper Swarms. So my whole detachment rule relied around 2 units, which I took 3 of each. So that's it. Not great. However, it does have fantastic enhancements and fantastic stratagems with the way Tyranids have CP farming in this one with Swarmlord and a Foot Tyrant, you can really use those CP manipulations to give yourself an edge. I still think Assimilation Swarm is bad, but I love the idea of Tyranids just regenning these giant bugs. It's not just regenning Hormagaunts or Termagants or Gargoyles. You're regenning full-blown Tyrant Guard and Pyrovores over and over again. And I love that because the Pyrovore is one of my favorite units in 40k. The Flamer is fantastic in 10th edition, which makes me love it even more. And the idea of 2 giant bricks of Tyrant Guard with the Tyrants regenning as they walk towards your opponent is just, I love it. I love it. But yeah, if I was telling someone, or someone's asking which detachment to start with or to try, I would not say Assimilation Swarm. I have probably 40 games at least under my belt with this list, or a slight tweak of this list, and 15 plus, probably 20 of those games at least are at tournaments, many of them GT. So I have the reps over and over and over with this list to know how finicky this thing is. There's so many times, and even I didn't play perfect in many of my games. I did not play perfectly, where you got to position your Psychophage just so perfectly on the objective, and then you got to put your Pyrovores just so perfectly down. And you got to make sure that your other Psychophage stays near your Hive Tyrant, and that if your Hive Tyrant is going to heroic intervention, you got to watch, okay, where would it heroically intervene? Can my Psychophage still stay in such a way that is within range of it, even when it's doing that? Or you can't get too greedy and you go for a long bomb charge with Swarmlord because he's nowhere near Psychophages now, and the Tyrant Guard will just crumble without a 6-up feel no pain. Even then, they will still kind of crumble. But there's just so many little minute things. I played on a chess clock for 3 out of the 5 games, and without a doubt, I spent a good chunk of my time just in my deployment step. Like you would see the clock after deployment, and I would be down an extra 5 or 6 minutes because it mattered so much where everything did. But then it moves pretty quick when you get the flow of it, and you just kind of move things around and you catch up on time pretty easily, because that's kind of the way Tyranids are. Especially this list. Not a lot of shooting, and if it is, it's flamers, so you get to skip the whole hit roll. You just roll your dice and have fun there. That's the other thing. This army has an insane amount of flamers, which are all fantastic to shoot, and they do decent. They threaten Overwatch, they threaten chaff units well. Yeah, I love it. I love the list. I think it is probably the best list I've come up with in 10th edition, for sure, as you can see by the results I've had with it. I am at GTs with this list. I am 10-1 at GTs with this final version. If you count the first iteration of this list, I went 3-2 in that GT, and that was not a nearly as competitive version of it. It was just the first test run. So I love it. It takes a lot of practice, but I warn you, it is not for the beginner. But this is the best list I've come up with since the Kraken list of 9th edition, which was, I'm not going to say I invented that list, but I will take credit for this one because I don't think anyone has used it unless they have followed this list. And I know people who've done well with this have reached out to me and said thank you for the list type of thing. But my 9th edition Kraken list, when everyone was playing Leviathan in 9th edition, if you guys had played then, you know, oh, Leviathan is the best way to play, and I'm here kicking butt with Kraken because it was so fun. That was a fun list, but that was an overpowered. That was an overpowered Tyranid list. This was a underpowered Tyranid detachment that I made work, and I love it for it. So yeah, it does have its weaknesses, like I said. Tau, Imperial Guard, very heavy shooty armies can deal with this. Do not underestimate the go to ground stratagem on your Tyrant Guard. If you are stuck out in the open, and your opponent doesn't have no recover, and or they have really high AP stuff, do not underestimate the go to ground strat. It works on Tyrant Guard because Tyrant Guard are infantry, and it does not exclude monsters from using it. You just have to be infantry, and Tyrant Guard with the Tyrant are technically both. So that goes a long way. I think I use it almost every game. At least the first 3 games I used it at least once every game, just to help give myself a chance to survive. But it is fun. I do love it. And from here out, we've got another detachment coming, so I'm looking forward to seeing what they bring and what kind of competitive sauce we can come up with there. But also, I'll do more videos about this later, where I'm just looking to have fun now with the Tyranids. I will still obviously put new content out for the channel, but I'm happy. I won. I got it. Again, thank you to all the opponents. It was a great set of games, really challenging set of games. I thought North Star Open was a exhausting set of games, but this was even more. And yeah, I'm happy. We're gonna have some fun with the Tyranids going into 2025, and we'll see what the 10th edition brings us. So thank you guys for watching. I know there's a little bit of a ranty video. I'll chop it up into time segments so you can kind of just go from there and see what it is. Hopefully I explained my list enough. It's a little hard because playing this list is almost second nature to me in some regards, just because of how much I have played it. But it really is just this amalgamation of Tyranids just walking up the board, sitting on the objectives and healing, and it's a really durable, you know, let my opponent make the first punch and then I hit him with the sucker punch of the fight first Hive Tyrant. Otherwise, you got to play cagey. You got to score your secondaries, which Tyranids are good at, and you got to be careful because it is a fragile army. Even though it is a regenning army, it can be a fragile army. We got a 5-0. I'm happy about that. We'll see what the future brings for the Tyranids and the channel. So thank you guys, and we'll see you next time here at Maelstrom Gaming Studios.